To save your useless brother, you sold yourself into my son's house like a nurse with a wedding ring. Don't you dare call this love. My mother-in-law, Evelyn Sterling, said that to me in the private dining room. For months later, the same woman who looked at me like dirt could barely stand when she saw me walk into the hospital. As always, before we dive into a story with an ending that's going to feel really satisfying for you, let's do a quick roll call. Type present and the city you're watching from in the comments. For everyone who has liked and subscribed, I pray that Allah makes your problems easier, widens your provision, and keeps your body healthy. Thank you, my friends. Now listen carefully to my story. I never imagined I would get married because of an ICU bill. If you had asked me a year before all this happened what my life looked like, I would have told you it was simple, maybe a little hard, but still mine. I was 29, working as a physical therapy assistant at a rehabilitation clinic in Chicago, living in a small 2-bedroom apartment with my younger brother, Noah. Our parents were gone. Mom passed when Noah was 16, Dad 2 years later, and ever since then, it had been me and him trying to stay afloat. Noah was the kind of person people loved immediately. He was funny, always making dumb jokes, always trying to make me laugh when I came home tired. He worked nights at a warehouse while taking online classes during the day because he still believed he could finish school and make us rich, as he liked to say. I used to roll my eyes and tell him to wash the dishes first before promising me a mansion. Then one rainy Tuesday, he collapsed at work. I got the call from an unknown number while I was helping an elderly patient practice, walking with a cane. The voice on the phone was tight and professional. "Is this Emma Carter? Your brother Noah Carter has been brought to St. Vincent Medical Center." The room around me went cold. I don't even remember how I handed my patient off to my coworker. I just remember driving too fast in the rain, my hands shaking on the wheel, and praying out loud the whole way there. At the hospital, they told me Noah had a severe infection that had turned dangerous fast. There were complications, they needed immediate procedures, and there were medications and specialist interventions insurance wouldn't fully cover. The doctor spoke calmly, but all I could hear was numbers. Numbers, numbers, numbers. I looked at Noah through the glass while he lay there with tubes in his arms, pale and half-conscious, and I felt like I was drowning standing up. That night, I called everyone I could think of. Old family friends, my supervisor, a former neighbor. I even called an uncle in Ohio who hadn't checked on us in years. Some people sent a little money. Most people said they were sorry. One person told me, "Try crowdfunding." I tried. It barely moved. For 2 weeks, I worked double shifts, slept on plastic hospital chairs, and lied to Noah every time he opened his eyes and asked, "We're good, right?" I'd smile and say, "Yeah, focus on getting better." But we were not good. The first red flag in my story came in the form of a woman with pearl earrings and a voice so smooth it scared me. I was standing in the hospital billing office arguing over payment extensions when a woman in a tailored navy suit stepped closer and said, "Miss Carter?" I turned, exhausted and irritated. "Yes." She held out a card. "My name is Diane Mercer. I'm legal counsel for Sterling Holdings. I'd like a private word if possible." I stared at her card because I thought I had heard wrong. Sterling Holdings was everywhere: real estate, hospitals, finance, tech, half the city, basically. "I think you have the wrong person." "I don't." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "This concerns an arrangement that may solve your brother's medical situation." That sentence made me angry before it made me curious. "What arrangement?" "Somewhere more private," she said. I should have walked away. I know that now. I know normal people don't get approached in hospital hallways by billionaire lawyers with mysterious offers. But my brother was in intensive care, I was running on caffeine and fear, and when someone says they can solve the problem that's crushing your chest, your brain stops working the way it should. Diane led me to a quiet consultation room. There was already another person inside, a man maybe in his 40s, expensive watch, polite face, quiet posture. He stood when I walked in. "Graham Sterling," he said. "I'm here on behalf of my family." Sterling. My heart dropped. He motioned for me to sit, and I stayed standing. "Please say what you need to say." He looked at Diane, then back at me. "My nephew, Adrian Sterling, is very ill." I blinked. Okay, and he needs a wife. I genuinely thought I had misheard him because of how little sleep I'd had. I'm sorry, what? Diane slid a folder across the table. Mr. Adrian Sterling is the sole acting heir to specific private family assets that are currently tied to trust conditions. One condition concerns marital status. He has no interest in a traditional marriage, but he needs a legal spouse for a limited period. Your situation and your profile make you a suitable candidate. I just stood there, frozen, staring at her. Graham lowered his voice. In exchange, your brother's full treatment and aftercare would be covered immediately. In addition, you would receive compensation. I laughed, but it came out shaky. This is insane. It's legal, Diane said. Contractual. Confidential. Why me? That was the question that kept burning in my head. Why me out of millions of women in this city? Diane answered like she had rehearsed it. No criminal record. Stable work history. No public scandals. No spouse. No children. Strong reputation for family caregiving. Financial need, yes, but no signs of substance issues, fraud, or volatility. You are likely to honor a contract. Something about hearing my life reduced to bullet points made my stomach turn. I looked at Graham. And what exactly is wrong with Adrian Sterling? He paused too long before speaking. He has a serious heart condition. His doctors estimate he may have only a few months. May have. That wording stayed with me. Diane opened the folder and pointed to a page. The arrangement would be for 4 months. There are clauses about public appearances, residence, confidentiality, and non-interference in corporate matters. You would not be required to perform intimate duties. She said it so clinically it made my skin crawl. This is a legal marriage, not a romantic one. I couldn't breathe right for a second. My brother needed treatment. This family needed a wife on paper. It sounded like a movie plot, something ridiculous. But there were billing reminders in my bag and collection notices already starting to come in. Can I see my brother's updated estimate first? I asked. Diane gave me a small nod and slid a second sheet over. It wasn't just an estimate. It was a direct guarantee letter drafted through one of Sterling's medical foundations. Coverage approval. Specialist authorization. Immediate release. I felt my knees go weak and sat down without meaning to. Graham softened his tone. No one is forcing you, Miss Carter. But time matters for your brother. That was the first time I noticed how every sentence they used was designed to sound kind while pushing me toward the edge. I took the folder home that night and sat at our kitchen table under the yellow light, reading every page while Noah slept in the hospital. My best friend, Rachel, came over around midnight with coffee and found me crying over paragraph 19. Rachel read faster than me and cussed. Louder than me too. This is creepy, Emma. This is rich people creepy. I know. It says you have to move into the Sterling residence. I know. It says they control public statements about the marriage. I know. It says if you breach confidentiality, they can sue you. I know. She dropped the papers on the table. Then don't do it. I pressed my hands to my face. No one needs surgery and post-op care. They'll stop treatment without coverage. Rachel leaned down and held my shoulders. We'll figure something else out. I looked at her and started crying harder because I wanted to believe her, and I couldn't. I don't have time to figure something else out. The next morning, I went back to the hospital and signed. Diane didn't look surprised. She only nodded and said, "A car will pick you up at 7 tonight. There will be a private legal ceremony." I asked one question before I left. Can I see him first? Adrian. She studied me for a second, then said, yes. Briefly. They took me to a private cardiac wing on the top floor that didn't even look like the rest of the hospital. It looked like a luxury hotel with nurses. The air was quiet. Soft carpets. Frosted glass. Money was everywhere, even in the silence. When I walked into Adrian Sterling's room, he was standing by the window in gray sweats, one hand braced on the sill. He was taller than I expected, early 30s maybe, dark hair, sharp features, and he looked not healthy, but not dying in the dramatic way I'd imagined either. Pale, yes. Tired around the eyes, yes, but very aware. He turned when he heard the door and looked at me for a long second. "So," he said, voice rough but calm, "you're the woman my family bought." I flinched. He noticed and gave a short, bitter smile. "Sit down. If we're doing this, we should at least be honest." I sat in the chair across from him, clutching my bag in my lap. He nodded toward it. "Contract." "Yes." "And your brother?" "In intensive care." He looked away for a moment and breathed slowly, like even that took effort. "I'm sorry. That surprised me." I didn't say anything. He turned back to me. "I didn't choose your situation. I did choose the arrangement. I need a wife for legal reasons. My family needs control. And they think someone with a sick brother won't ask too many questions." There it was. Straight to the point. "Are they wrong?" I asked quietly. His eyes held mine. "I don't know yet." A nurse came in then to check his medication line. I watched the way Adrian's jaw tightened when she mentioned his dosage. He thanked her politely. The second she left, he sat on the edge of the bed like he was tired beyond words. "For months," he said. "That's the official number they gave you?" I nodded. He gave a humorless laugh. "Convenient." Something in my stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" "It means my family has been planning around my death longer than they've been saying out loud." Before I could ask anything else, Diane appeared at the door and said it was time. That sentence followed me all night. The ceremony happened in a private room at the Sterling mansion, and calling it a wedding would be generous. It was paperwork in expensive clothes. I wore a cream dress they had sent to the hospital that afternoon. Adrian wore a black suit and looked like he was trying not to pass out. A judge read the legal words. Diane stood with a file. Graham stood near the fireplace. And Evelyn Sterling, Adrian's mother, looked at me like I had mud on her carpet. That was when she said the line from the beginning of this story. "To save your useless brother, you sold yourself into my son's house like a nurse with a wedding ring. Don't you dare call this love." My face burned. My hands went cold. I opened my mouth, but Adrian cut in first. "Mother," he said, quiet but sharp, "if you want this signed tonight, stop talking." Evelyn's mouth tightened, but she stepped back. I signed with a hand that trembled so much I almost messed up my own name. After the judge left, Diane gave me a copy of the marriage certificate and another folder labeled residence rules. Rules. Like I was moving into a boarding school. I glanced at Adrian. He looked tired and angry and trapped in a way I recognized immediately. That was my first night in the Sterling mansion, and I remember lying in a guest suite bigger than my whole apartment, staring at the ceiling and realizing I had saved Noah's life by stepping into a house that didn't feel like a home at all. And I remember thinking, very clearly, something is wrong in this family beyond the contract. The Sterling mansion sat in an old money suburb north of the city, the kind of neighborhood where every driveway curved and every front lawn looked edited. The house itself was huge without being flashy, all stone and dark wood and quiet hallways that made every footstep feel like a mistake. By the second morning, I learned 3 things. First, there were cameras in almost every common area. Second, everyone in the staff was polite to me but careful, like they'd been given instructions. Third, Evelyn expected me to fail. Breakfast was in a long sunroom with glass walls and white flowers on the table. I came in wearing simple clothes because no one had told me if this family did formal breakfast or normal breakfast. Evelyn looked me up and down before sipping her tea. "We usually dress properly in the mornings," she said. I looked at my sweater and slacks. I thought this was proper. "For your world, maybe." Graham was there with a tablet in front of him, pretending not to hear. Adrian arrived late, pale and slow, and sat beside me without greeting anyone. A housekeeper named Maria served him a small plate and medication. Evelyn watched me the whole time. "I've informed the social office connected to your brother's case that the Family Foundation is now handling his expenses. You can stop dramatizing his situation at the hospital." I set down my fork. I wasn't dramatizing anything. He was critically ill. She gave a thin smile. "You people always think urgency excuses bad manners." I felt my throat close. I wanted to snap back. I wanted to throw my coffee in her face. Instead, I stared at the table and said, "Thank you for helping him." That was what she wanted, gratitude without dignity. Adrian's fork stopped against his plate. He looked at his mother and said, "You made your point.
Eat."
The room went quiet. Evelyn didn't argue, but the look she gave me promised this was far from over. Later that day, I visited Noah. He looked better than he had in weeks, still weak but alert, and when he saw the ring on my finger, his expression changed immediately. "Emma," he whispered. "What did you do?" I tried to smile. "I made a deal." He started tearing up.
No. No, no, no.
"Tell me you didn't." I grabbed his hand. "Stop. You need to recover." He was crying now, angry and ashamed. "I'm not worth this." "Don't ever say that." He turned his face away, and I sat there holding his hand while he shook with silent tears. It broke me in a way Evelyn never could, because Noah's pain was pure. He knew exactly what I had given up, and he hated himself for it. When I got back to the mansion that evening, Evelyn was hosting a small family dinner. No warning. Diane had texted me, appropriate attire requested, and by the time I came downstairs in a black dress from the closet they had stocked for me, 6 people were already seated. That was my first real introduction to the Sterling family circle. Graham, always controlled. Evelyn, smiling too much. Adrian, drained and quiet. Adrian's cousin Blake Sterling, loud and polished, with the kind of confidence that feels rehearsed. Blake's wife, Vanessa, all diamonds and fake warmth. And a family friend named Charles Whitmore, a board member from one of the hospital groups. The moment I sat down, Blake lifted his glass and grinned. To Adrian's surprise marriage. No one saw that coming. Vanessa laughed. Especially the tabloids. "You've made everyone curious, Emma." I smiled tightly. "I'm sure they'll survive." Charles leaned forward. "How did you two meet, exactly?" Before I could answer, Evelyn said, "Through one of our medical charities." Emma has a very caregiving spirit. The way she said it made me feel like a pet they had adopted. Blake smirked.
Ah.
"A charity romance." Adrian's jaw tensed. "Blake." "What?" "I'm happy for you." Blake looked at me and said, "You must be overwhelmed. This is a very different world." I looked him right in the eye. "People keep telling me that." Vanessa cut in, smiling sweetly. "Don't worry. Evelyn will help you learn. There are a lot of expectations in this family." There it was. Humiliation wrapped in etiquette. I kept my face neutral, but under the table my fingers were digging into my palm. This was the part people don't understand when they talk about rich people problems. It wasn't the money. It was how they used manners like knives. Dinner got worse when the topic shifted to children. Vanessa rested a hand on her stomach and sighed dramatically. "Evelyn keeps asking when we're giving her another grandbaby. Apparently one isn't enough." Evelyn smiled at Vanessa, a real smile this time. "At least you're trying." Then she turned to me. "Some women are naturally maternal. Others are useful in different ways." I froze. The room went quiet enough that I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Adrian put down his fork. "We're not doing this." Evelyn took a sip of wine. "I'm only being practical, Adrian. Given your health, timelines matter." I felt all the blood drain out of my face. They were talking about his death like a calendar event, and my body like a project. I looked at Adrian, expecting him to say something stronger. He didn't. He just stood up slowly and said, "Emma, we're done here." We left the table together. Once we were in the hallway, I pulled my hand away from his and whispered, "How do you live with this?" He laughed once, low and tired. "I don't. I survive it." That was the first clear humiliation, and I wish I could say I got stronger right away, but I didn't. I went back to my room and cried in the bathroom with the shower running so no one would hear me. I stared at my face in the mirror after and barely recognized myself. I had a husband I didn't know, in-laws who treated me like a temporary employee, and a brother in recovery because of a contract I could not break. From that day, my name in that house didn't feel like my name anymore. The cruelty didn't come all at once after that. It came in small, daily doses, which somehow made it worse. At breakfast, Evelyn would ask Maria to bring Mrs. Sterling's tray, and then look at me and say, "Oh, not you, dear. Adrian's mother was Mrs. Sterling long before you arrived." She'd smile while she said it. Every single time. Vanessa started sending me links to polishing consultants and private etiquette coaches, pretending she was helping. Blake called me Nightingale at family lunches because I had come from a hospital. Once, when Adrian wasn't there, he leaned close and said, "Don't get attached to the house. Temporary arrangements end." I told Adrian that evening while he was sitting in his study, rubbing his chest like it hurt. He looked up sharply. "He said that?" "Yes." He stared at the desk for a few seconds, then said, "Stay away from Blake unless someone else is present." That answer bothered me.
Why?
What does he want? Adrian's eyes moved to the door before he spoke. Control. Access. Maybe more. I'm still figuring out who is moving what behind my back. Behind your back? He exhaled slowly. Emma, the trust condition isn't the only reason this marriage happened. I stepped closer. Then tell me the rest. He looked at me for a long time, and I could see the hesitation in him. Not because he didn't know, but because he didn't trust what happened if he said it out loud. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed.
He checked it, and his face changed.
"Diane wants me at the downtown office tomorrow," he said. "There's a board issue." The next morning, I went to the hospital to check on Noah, and then stopped by the rehab clinic to speak to my manager about unpaid leave. I was standing by the front desk when Rachel rushed in with her hair half up and a paper bag in her hand. "Before you say anything," she said, "I brought you actual food." I laughed for the first time in days. We sat in my old break room while I told her about the family dinner, the comments, the cameras, the weirdness around Adrian's illness. Rachel listened with that angry face she gets when she's trying not to interrupt. When I finished, she said, "I don't trust that cousin." "I don't either. And I really don't trust the mother." "Same." "And your husband?" I looked down at the sandwich in my hand. "I don't know yet. He's not kind exactly. But he's not cruel the way they are. He looks cornered." Rachel leaned back. "That can still be dangerous, Emma. Cornered men do bad things." She was right. I knew she was right. But there was something in Adrian's face every time Evelyn spoke to him that didn't look like a spoiled rich guy playing a game. It looked like someone being watched. That afternoon, Noah's doctor asked to speak with me privately. I panicked immediately, thinking something had gone wrong, but it wasn't Noah. He held a chart and said, "I'm only mentioning this because your name is now connected to the Sterling family care file." A private transfer request was submitted from the Sterling side for certain patient records. I frowned. Noah's records?
He shook his head. "No."
Mr. Adrian Sterling's cardiac consultations. It was unusual because the request was marked urgent but not initiated by his direct treatment team. My stomach tightened. Who submitted it? He hesitated. I can't disclose internal names, but I can say it was routed through administrative legal channels. Legal channels? Diane? Graham? Evelyn? Someone else? I tried to sound calm. "Why are you telling me this?" He lowered his voice. "Because the request was then canceled an hour later. That usually means someone made a move and got caught. Be careful what papers you sign in that family." I couldn't say anything for a second. He handed me Noah's discharge planning packet and tapped the top page. "Your brother's doing better. Focus on him. But keep copies of everything. Keep copies of everything." That sentence became one of the most important things anyone said to me. When I got back to the mansion, Adrian was in the library with a glass of water and a stack of folders spread across the table. He looked exhausted, tie loose, shirt collar open, one hand pressed to his ribs. I stepped in and closed the door behind me. "I need to ask you something." He glanced up. "Bad day. Did someone in your family try to access your cardiac records through legal channels?" His eyes sharpened instantly.
"Who told you that?"
"A doctor warned me to be careful." For a few seconds, he said nothing. Then he sat back in his chair and looked at the ceiling like he was very, very tired. "Sit," he said. I sat. He slid one folder toward me. "Open it." Inside were copies of trust documents, board resolutions, and an insurance policy summary. Most of it was legal language I didn't fully understand, but one line caught my eye immediately. Keyman Life Insurance Beneficiary Review Pending Marriage Status Confirmation. I looked up. What is this? Adrian watched my face. It means several people become richer if I die at the right time, under the right conditions. My hands started shaking. He nodded toward another page. And if I'm married, some control shifts. Temporarily. That made my mother rush this. It also made certain people angry. I swallowed hard. Are you saying someone wants to? He cut me off, voice low. I'm saying my illness is real. I'm also saying people around me have been acting like my death is a schedule, not a tragedy. I looked back down at the papers, trying to process the numbers and names. Evelyn. Graham. A trust arm. Board oversight. Beneficiary percentages. It was too much. Then I saw a sticky note clipped to the back of the packet. It looked random. Maybe forgotten during a meeting. On it was a handwritten line. Confirm old test set only. Delay external review. I stared at it. What does this mean? Adrian leaned forward, eyes fixed on the note. I was hoping you'd tell me. My mouth went dry. Old test set. He held my gaze. I've been asking for second opinion for 6 weeks. Diane keeps saying it's being arranged. Has it been arranged?
No.
We sat there in silence, and I could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway outside. A giant mansion. A billionaire family. Lawyers. Board members.
Doctors.
And somehow the man at the center of it all couldn't even get a second medical opinion without someone interfering. I looked at the sticky note again. Can I keep a copy of this? I asked. Adrian's expression changed slightly, like he hadn't expected that question. Why? Because I'm starting to think the contract isn't the only thing I signed into. And if someone is moving your records around, I want proof I saw this. For the first time since I met him, Adrian looked at me like an ally instead of an obligation. He pulled the note off the packet, grabbed his phone, took a clear photo, then handed me the original. Keep it somewhere they won't search. I folded it carefully and slid it inside the lining pocket of my wallet. That tiny sticky note was the first real thing I kept, my first plant, even though I didn't fully understand how big it was yet. That night, I hid it inside an old jewelry pouch in the back of a drawer under sweaters I never wore. And while I was closing the drawer, I heard footsteps outside my room door stop for just a second, then move away. The gaslighting started after I asked too many questions. At first, it was subtle. Diane would tell me things like, "You're under a lot of stress, Emma. It's normal to misunderstand legal paperwork." Or, "Medical terms can sound alarming if you're not used to them." She said it in that calm lawyer voice, like she was helping me, but every sentence was basically, "You're confused, let the adults handle it." Then Evelyn joined in. One afternoon, I found Adrian's lunch untouched in the conservatory and later saw him in his study looking pale and sweating, one hand pressed to his chest. I told Evelyn, he needs his doctor checked on. He doesn't look okay. She barely looked up from her magazine. He's always dramatic before board meetings. I stared at her. He looked like he was in pain. She closed the magazine slowly. "Emma, your background is in rehab support, yes? Not cardiology. Try not to panic every time my son breathes differently."
I knew what I saw.
I knew he was struggling. But the way she said it made me feel stupid for a second, and that's exactly how gaslighting works. It doesn't need to erase reality. It only needs to make you doubt yourself long enough to stay quiet. Later, when Adrian admitted he'd had chest pressure for hours and his medication dose had been changed without his approval, I felt sick. "Who changed it?" I asked. He gave a short laugh without humor. "Officially? Care team adjustment. Unofficially? Pick a family member with a phone." That same week, I tried to spend more time with Noah after he moved out of ICU and into a monitored recovery room. Evelyn hated that. At breakfast, she said, "You can't keep running back to that hospital every day. You have responsibilities here." "My brother almost died. And my son is dying," she snapped, finally dropping the polished tone. "Or have you forgotten the man you married?" The room went silent. Maria froze beside the coffee pot. Graham looked up from his tablet, but said nothing. I took a breath. I haven't forgotten. But Noah is my family. Evelyn leaned forward. You're a Sterling now. Act like it. I looked at her, and something in me hardened. Then maybe this family should learn what loyalty looks like. Her eyes narrowed. Careful. That one word sat between us like a threat. After that, little things started happening. My driver's schedule to the hospital got mixed up twice. A nurse told me a woman claiming to be a family representative called asking if Noah could be moved to a less expensive facility for comfort. I shut that down immediately and demanded every note be documented. Then Noah called me one evening, voice shaking. Emma, some guy came by asking questions. Said he was from financial assistance. He asked if I knew your husband's medical condition and whether you were under pressure. I nearly dropped the phone. What did you say? I told him to leave. Good. Noah, listen to me. Don't talk to anyone about me or Adrian unless I say it's okay. And if anyone comes again, call the nurse station right away. When I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly, I had to sit down on the hallway bench outside the mansion's west wing. Adrian found me there a minute later. He looked worn out, tie in his hand, top button open, like he'd just come back from another fight in a suit. What happened? He asked. I told him everything. By the time I finished, his face had gone still in a way that scared me more than anger. They went to your brother? I don't know who they is. He nodded once. I do. Who? Blake, he said. And maybe Vanessa. He's been trying to collect dirt to challenge any trust shift tied to our marriage. I stared at him. Can he do that? He can try. He'll argue coercion, fraud, instability. Anything to discredit you. The hallway suddenly felt too small.
So,
they're going to paint me as some crazy scammer. He looked at me hard. That's already started. I couldn't breathe for a second.
What?
He reached into his jacket and handed me a folded printout. It was a screenshot from a gossip site comment thread under an article about our marriage. Most comments were the usual trash, but one stood out because it included details not public. Hospital debt, my brother's condition, the exact rehab clinic where I worked. The comment called me a predatory caregiver who trapped a dying man. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. Who posted it? I whispered. Anonymous account, Adrian said. But the wording sounds like Blake's office team. I had IT flag it. I looked at the paper again and felt heat rise behind my eyes. They're trying to make me look like a gold digger before anything even happens. Yes. And you knew. I found out an hour ago. I stood up too fast. Then why am I still here? Adrian's face changed, and for the first time, I saw real fear under all his control. Because if you leave now, they win everything. I laughed, but it came out broken. Everything? Adrian, I'm sleeping in a room with cameras in the hallway, and your family is sending people to question my brother in recovery. What exactly am I fighting for? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. The truth. And your own protection. I stared at him. He looked over his shoulder, then back at me. Emma, listen carefully. I don't think my mother planned all of this. I think she's controlling and cruel. Yes, but I think Blake is moving faster and dirtier than she realizes. If he proves you're unstable or manipulative, he can challenge the marriage legitimacy. If that happens, certain trust protections collapse. If those protections collapse, I lose control of medical decisions and corporate voting proxies while I'm still alive. My stomach dropped. Medical decisions? I said. You mean someone else could? Yes.
His voice was flat now.
They could move me, medicate me, isolate me, and call it family management. I just stared at him, frozen. He ran a hand through his hair, exhausted. I need you to stay calm and stop speaking to Diane alone. I already didn't trust her.
Good.
Also, keep a record of everything. Times, dates, calls. I nodded slowly, trying to hold onto the words. He looked at me for another second, and then said something that changed how I saw him. I know you didn't marry me for love, but I won't let them destroy you for saving your brother. I had no idea what to say. Because in that moment, he wasn't the billionaire in a contract. He was a sick man in his own house, fighting people who were waiting for him to lose. That night, I called Rachel from my room and whispered the whole thing while pacing. When I finished, she said, "Emma, this is bigger than family drama. This sounds like corporate war." "I know. Do you have proof of any of it?" "Only pieces. A sticky note, a screenshot, weird hospital requests." "Then start building a folder. Not on their devices. Get a cheap phone if you have to." I sat on the edge of the bed. What if I'm overreacting? Rachel didn't even pause. "You are living in a mansion where a billionaire's cousin is digging through your sick brother's life while your husband's medication gets changed without clear consent. You are not overreacting." I laughed weakly, because hearing it said out loud made it sound even crazier. After the call, I took out the jewelry pouch and checked the sticky note again. Confirm old test set only. Delay external review. I wrote down everything I remembered in a notebook I bought from a pharmacy near the hospital. Dates, names, comments, incidents, who said what time Noah got questioned, when the driver mixed up my schedule. As I was writing, there was a knock on my door. I hid the notebook under a pillow before saying, "Come in." Diane stepped in with her usual calm expression and a file tucked under her arm. "Sorry to disturb you so late," she said. "I need your signature on a media privacy addendum." I didn't stand up. "Can it wait until morning?" "It's routine." She smiled. "No need to be anxious." There it was again. The tone. Like I was a difficult child. I held out my hand. "Leave it. I'll read it first." She paused for half a second too long. "Of course." When she handed me the file, I saw 3 tabs inside. Media privacy. Household conduct. Medical authorization acknowledgement. I looked up immediately. "What's this third one?" Standard acknowledgement that you understand Mr. Sterling's condition and defer to existing care directives. "I'm not signing anything medical tonight." Diane's smile stayed in place, but her eyes cooled. "It doesn't grant you power. It simply confirms you won't interfere." I met her gaze. "Then it can wait." She stood there for a moment in silence, and I could feel the pressure in the room even though she wasn't raising her voice. Finally she nodded. "As you wish. I'll return tomorrow." After she left, I locked the door, sat on the floor, and read every page. Buried in the acknowledgement section was language allowing household legal counsel to coordinate communication with outside providers on behalf of the spouse for efficiency. On behalf of the spouse. Using my name. I felt physically sick. That was the night I understood I wasn't only trapped in a cruel family. I was being positioned. Used. Signed into places I didn't fully see yet. And the next morning, before I could decide what to do, Evelyn announced there would be a formal family meeting with lawyers on Sunday to clarify expectations. The way she smiled when she said it told me that meeting was not for clarity. It was for control. By the time Sunday came, I had slept maybe 6 hours total across 3 nights. Noah was stable enough to joke with me again, which was the only thing keeping me from falling apart, but even that had a shadow on it now because I kept checking over my shoulder in hospital hallways. I hated that. I hated what this family was doing to my nerves. Sunday's family meeting took place in a wood-paneled sitting room at the Sterling mansion that looked like a private club. Heavy curtains. Silver trays. A fireplace, no one lit. Evelyn had arranged it like an event, which made it worse. Present in the room, Evelyn, Adrian, Graham, Diane, Blake, Vanessa, and a gray-haired attorney named Howard Pike who introduced himself as trust counsel. I was the only one there who looked like I hadn't grown up around meetings with lawyers. Adrian looked exhausted before it even started. He had dark circles under his eyes, and his hand trembled once when he reached for water. I noticed. Evelyn noticed me noticing, and gave me a look like I should keep my face blank. Howard opened a folder and smiled the way lawyers do when they're about to say something terrible politely. "This is not a hostile proceeding. We simply want to ensure all parties understand the temporary marital arrangement and related asset boundaries." Temporary marital arrangement. I sat straighter. Marriage is marriage, isn't it? Blake leaned back and smirked. Depends why people do it. Adrian's voice cut through the room. Watch yourself. Howard continued like he hadn't heard.
Them.
Mrs. Sterling, Emma, under the current trust terms, your status as Adrian's legal spouse triggers limited protections and contingent authorities. These remain valid so long as there is no evidence of coercion, fraud, misrepresentation, or misconduct. My mouth went dry. Misconduct. Diane folded her hands. For example, unauthorized contact with media, interference in care teams, misuse of family funds, or conduct that harms Mr. Sterling's reputation. I stared at her. I've done none of that. Vanessa gave a small, fake sympathetic smile. No one's accusing you, Emma. This is standard. Then Blake slid a paper across the table. Then maybe you can explain this. It was a printout of the gossip site screenshot. The exact same one Adrian had shown me, except now it was highlighted in yellow. My brother's name. My clinic. Predatory caregiver. All highlighted like evidence. I looked at Blake. I didn't post that. He shrugged. It's about you. And it includes private details. That suggests leaking. I felt heat rush to my face. Or it suggests someone in this room leaked it. The room went still. Evelyn's expression hardened immediately. Be very careful before you start throwing accusations. I looked at Diane. You came to my room with documents trying to route medical communication through me. Diane blinked once, then gave a calm smile. I brought routine acknowledgments. You refused to sign because you seemed overwhelmed. There it was. Gaslighting in front of witnesses. My hands started shaking, but I forced myself to keep my voice steady. I refused because the language was broad and could be used to speak in my name. Howard held up a hand. Let's keep this constructive. Adrian leaned forward, pale but focused. Howard, stop pretending this is neutral. Blake is building a challenge file. Blake gave an offended laugh. I'm protecting the family from opportunists. I turned to him, so fast my chair scraped. You sent someone to question my brother in recovery. Vanessa gasped like I had cursed in church. Emma. Blake's face shifted for a split second, small but I saw it. That's ridiculous. It happened 2 days ago, I said. A man claiming to be from financial assistance asked Noah about me and Adrian. Evelyn looked at Diane. Did you authorize that? Diane's face stayed blank.
No.
Graham finally spoke, low and controlled. Blake. Blake spread his hands. How would I know who visits public hospitals? Maybe she's paranoid. Paranoid. That word hit me like a slap. I looked around the room and suddenly understood the game perfectly. If I got emotional, I'd be unstable. If I defended myself, I'd be combative. If I stayed quiet, they'd define me. Howard cleared his throat. This is exactly why we need clean boundaries. Emma, if you sign the behavioral and confidentiality clarifications, we can avoid misunderstandings. He pushed another folder toward me. I opened it and flipped through quickly. Most of it looked like formal language, but halfway through I saw a clause requiring any dispute involving household conduct to go through internal family counsel before outside legal consultation. I looked up.
No.
Evelyn's smile disappeared. Excuse me? I'm not signing this. Her voice went cold. After what this family has done for your brother? There it was.
The debt.
The leash. My chest tightened, but I said it anyway. Helping my brother doesn't give you the right to trap me in your legal process. Vanessa whispered. Ungrateful. Blake leaned forward, almost excited now.
See?
This is exactly what I meant. Adrian, she's becoming a problem. Adrian stood up too fast, and for a second, he had to grab the table edge. I moved instinctively, but he lifted a hand to stop me and kept his eyes on Blake. The only problem in this room, Adrian said, breathing hard, is the man acting like I'm already dead. No one spoke. He turned to Howard. Meeting over. Howard looked at Evelyn, not Adrian. That told me everything. Evelyn rose slowly, smoothing her sleeve. Sit down, Adrian. You are not well enough to make emotional decisions. Adrian laughed once, bitter and tired. That line again. Then he looked at me. Emma, come with me. We had just reached the hallway when Evelyn's voice followed us, sharp and clear. If she refuses cooperation, then she can leave this house and forfeit everything. I stopped walking. Adrian turned back slowly. Say that again. Evelyn stepped into the hallway, chin lifted. I said if your wife won't cooperate with the family's legal structure, she should not remain under this roof. I couldn't move. It was happening. The official push. The moment where all the fake politeness dropped and they finally tried to throw me out. Adrian looked like he might collapse, but his voice came out steady. This house is held under my authority. For now, Blake muttered behind her. I saw Adrian hear it. I saw the anger hit him. He took one step forward and then winced, hand pressing hard against his chest. Adrian. I grabbed his arm. Maria came running from the corridor. Graham swore under his breath. For a second, the whole hallway turned chaotic. Evelyn's face changed from anger to alarm, but even then she snapped at me. Don't touch him. Adrian pulled his arm free from both of us and looked straight at his mother, pale as paper. You want cooperation? He said, voice low and shaking. Then hear this clearly. Emma stays. Any document goes through my review first. And if anyone goes near her brother again, I'll freeze every discretionary payment Blake is using. Blake's face lost color immediately. There it was. A direct hit. He recovered fast and sneered. You don't have the stamina for a war, Adrian. Adrian smiled in a way that made even me go still. Then don't start one you can't hide. He turned and walked away with me, slower this time, one hand tight against his chest. I stayed beside him all the way to his study, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. Once the door shut, he braced both hands on the desk and breathed through clenched teeth. I'm calling your doctor, I said. No. He stopped, swallowed, then nodded once. No, call Dr. Kaplan. Direct line. Not the house nurse. I grabbed his phone from the desk and found the contact with shaking hands. While it rang, I looked at him and realized this was the official fall everyone in that house had planned for me. Not divorce papers, not yet. But the first formal attempt to isolate me, control me, and make me sign away my protection while using my brother's life as leverage. And as Dr. Kaplan answered and I started explaining Adrian's symptoms, I looked over at the side table and noticed a sealed envelope half hidden under a file, stamped with the logo of an outside cardiac institute. Second opinion request. Pending. Someone had been delaying it. And I knew in that moment this wasn't over, not even close. I married Adrian Sterling to save my brother Noah's life, then got trapped in a mansion full of control, humiliation, and legal games. By the end of the family meeting, they were already trying to force me to sign away my protections, and I discovered Adrian's outside second opinion request had been delayed. Dr. Kaplan arrived at the mansion in less than 30 minutes, which told me two things immediately. Adrian's condition was serious, and the house staff had not been calling the right doctor on purpose. He was a lean man in his 60s with silver hair, tired eyes, and the kind of calm voice that makes you listen. He didn't greet anyone in the hallway except me and Adrian. He checked Adrian right there in the study first, then asked for privacy. I stepped out, but the door didn't close all the way, and I heard enough to know this wasn't normal. You were not supposed to be on this dosage, Dr. Kaplan said, low but sharp. Adrian answered, voice strained. That's what I've been saying. Who adjusted your medication chart? A pause. Then Adrian gave a weak laugh. Pick a department. 10 minutes later, Dr. Kaplan came out and looked straight at me. He's stable for now, but he needs proper monitoring tonight. I'm arranging a private transfer in the morning, and this time I want no legal office interference. Then he lowered his voice. You were right to call me directly. That tiny sentence almost made me cry from relief. Evelyn appeared at the end of the hall before I could answer, all silk robe and anger pretending to be concerned. Doctor, Adrian belongs under the house protocol. Dr. Kaplan didn't even blink. He belongs under medical protocol. I swear the air changed. Evelyn's face tightened, but Dr. Kaplan was older than her, more established, and clearly not scared. "I'll send written instructions," he said. "To Adrian. Not legal counsel." Then he walked past her. I stood there frozen, and Evelyn slowly turned to me. "You're enjoying this." I stared at her. "Your son was in pain, and your first concern was protocol." Her jaw clenched. "You don't understand this family." "No," I said quietly. "I understand more every day." She stepped closer, voice dropping. "Do not mistake a temporary ring for power, Emma. Women like you get emotional and make messes they can't survive." My hands were shaking, but I held her gaze. "Then it's a good thing I'm done being emotional in this house." I walked away before she could answer, and it was the first time I saw her look truly unsettled. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at Adrian's study desk while he rested on the couch because Dr. Kaplan wanted him monitored, and I built my folder. Not a fancy folder. A cheap brown accordion file Rachel bought me from a pharmacy, hidden inside a canvas tote that looked like gym clothes. Inside it, I started organizing everything: the sticky note about the old test set, the gossip site screenshot, dates of the driver mix-ups, Noah's account of the hospital visitor, and notes about Diane's late-night signature attempt. At around 2 a.m., Adrian opened his eyes and saw me labeling papers. "What are you doing?" he asked, voice rough. "Taking Rachel's advice." He gave a faint smile. "I should probably thank Rachel." I looked over at him. "You should probably meet her only if you're wearing armor." That made him laugh, then wince. I got him water and sat in the chair across from him. The room was quiet except for the clock and his breathing. For the first time since we met, there was no lawyer, no mother, no cousin, no performance. "Why me?" I asked finally. "Really?" He looked at the ceiling for a second before answering. "At first, because Diane's team brought me profiles and yours was the only one that didn't look like a trap from another wealthy family." He turned his head toward me. "Then I saw your file note about your brother and realized they picked someone desperate enough to accept their terms." I didn't flinch this time. "That part is true." He nodded. "I know. And I still hate that it's true." I sat back, exhausted. "I keep thinking I made the worst decision of my life." "You made the only decision you thought would save your brother." "That's not the same thing as being right." "No," he said softly. "It isn't." We stayed quiet for a while. Then he said, "There's something else you need to know." I looked up. "My father," he said, "set up more than one trust before he died. The family talks like this is all about inheritance, but it's also about board control. If I'm declared medically unfit or if our marriage is invalidated, voting authority shifts to a temporary family committee. Evelyn, Blake, Graham. Evelyn and Graham officially. Blake through proxies." My stomach sank. "So, if they can make me look unstable or fraudulent, they can weaken your position while you're still alive." "Yes." I looked down at the file in my lap. "Then they're not just humiliating me. They're using me as a tool to get to you." He held my gaze. "Exactly." That was the moment the whole story changed in my head. I had been surviving cruelty. Now I understood I was standing inside a plan. The next morning, I went with Adrian to Dr. Kaplan's clinic instead of the hospital network connected to Sterling Holdings. Diane tried to stop it by calling 3 times before we left. Adrian ignored her. The driver was suddenly unavailable, so I drove. I was nervous because Adrian looked pale and weak in the passenger seat, but he kept giving me directions in a calm voice like we were just running errands. At one red light, he leaned his head back and said, "If my mother finds out I left the house without legal review, she'll start a fire." I kept my eyes on the road. "Good. Let it burn where everyone can see." He turned and looked at me, surprised, then smiled a little. "Rachel is rubbing off on you." Dr. Kaplan's clinic was smaller than the hospital towers but cleaner, quieter, and somehow more honest. We spent almost 4 hours there: imaging, labs, medication review, prior records requests. Dr. Kaplan brought in another specialist, Dr. Lena Morris, a cardiologist with blunt energy and zero patience for nonsense. She came into the consultation room with a tablet and said, "I'm going to say this clearly because I hate politics in medicine. Your condition is serious, Adrian. but your current progression does not match the timeline you've been told. The room went silent. Adrian blinked slowly. What timeline? The 4 months left narrative. My fingers tightened around my notebook. Dr. Morris tapped the screen. Based on the records we were finally able to pull, some of your most alarming risk projections were built on older imaging sets and incomplete medication response data. That doesn't mean you're fine. It means your case appears to have been managed with outdated assumptions. Outdated assumptions. I thought of the sticky note instantly. Confirm old test set only. Adrian's face went still. Can you put that in writing? Dr. Morris looked him dead in the eye. I already am. I had to look down because my eyes filled up too fast. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. But for the first time, a medical expert said what I had been feeling in my bones. Something was wrong. Adrian noticed me wiping my face and said quietly, Emma. I laughed through it.
Sorry.
I'm not crying because you're rich. I'm crying because I'm tired. Dr. Kaplan gave me the gentlest look and said, That's usually why people cry in my office. By the time we left, we had a packet. Updated medication instructions, a recommendation for monitored treatment, changes, and a formal second opinion summary signed by both doctors. I held that folder like it was made of glass. In the parking lot, Adrian leaned against the car for a second and closed his eyes. I knew they were managing me.
I
didn't know how far. I looked at him. What do we do now? He opened his eyes. We stop assuming this is private. That same afternoon, I went to see Noah and told him a version of the truth. Not all the corporate details, but enough. He was sitting up in bed, color finally back in his face, wearing a hoodie Rachel brought him and complaining about hospital soup. Seeing him like that almost made me forget the mansion for 10 seconds. Then I told him someone had been asking questions about him. His face darkened. Because of me. Because of them, I said firmly. Do not take this on. He looked miserable. Emma, I hate that you're trapped there because of me. I pulled my chair closer. Listen to me. You are not the reason they're bad people. They were already bad. You just made me desperate enough to walk into it. He looked down, jaw tight. Still. I reached into my bag and handed him a small notebook. Write down everything you remember about the guy who came to your room. Height, clothes, words, time. Even if it feels dumb, details matter now. He looked up. Are we building a case? I gave a tired smile. We're building the truth. He nodded and took the notebook. Then he grabbed my wrist before I stood up. Be careful, Em. Rich people smile while they ruin you. That sentence stayed with me all week. My first real helper, besides Rachel, came from the most unexpected place. Maria, the housekeeper. She had been with the Sterlings for 16 years and moved through the mansion like wallpaper. Always there, never acknowledged. I had noticed she saw everything, but I didn't know if she trusted me. 3 nights after the clinic visit, she knocked on my door with tea and said, Mrs. Sterling, Emma, may I come in for 1 minute? Her voice was quiet but serious, so I nodded. She set the tray down and pulled a folded paper from her apron pocket. I should not keep this, she whispered. I found it in the shred bin near Mr. Blake's temporary office. I unfolded it and felt my pulse jump. It was a printed email header and partial body, torn but readable enough. From Assistant at Sprivety Office to Field Consult. Subject: Verify caregiver background / family leverage. The visible lines included Noah's hospital floor and the words, approach gently and document emotional response. I looked up at Maria. Why are you giving this to me? She hesitated, eyes on the floor. Because I raised my son alone. And when people with money decide a poor family is weak, they stop seeing them as human. Then she looked at me directly. Also because Mr. Adrian is kinder than they think, and he looks less afraid when you are near him. I didn't know what to say. I was so shocked I just whispered, Thank you. Maria nodded toward the paper. Make a copy. Hide the original somewhere not in your room. Staff rooms are searchless. After she left, I sat on my bed staring at the email scrap, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something stronger than fear. Validation. The next days were messy, but different. I wasn't wandering in confusion anymore. I had direction. I called Rachel and read the email aloud. She let out a long breath. Okay, now we're not just suspicious. That's direct. I know. You need a lawyer who doesn't work for them. I know. And don't tell Adrian until you've copied everything twice. I blinked. Why not tell him? Because if he gets cornered, they'll search him first, not you. She was right again. Still, I told Adrian that evening because at this point we were in the same fire whether we liked it or not. We were in his study, both tired, both drinking coffee too late at night. When I showed him the email scrap, he read it twice, then sat very still. That's Blake's private office domain, he said quietly. I watched his face. Can we use this? Not alone. It's partial. He looked up. But with witness statements, hospital records, and the timing of the gossip post? Yes. He took a slow breath, then added, It's time you meet someone. The next morning, he took me to a small law office downtown that looked nothing like Sterling legal headquarters. No giant lobby. No marble. Just an older building, a receptionist who offered us real coffee, and a brass nameplate, Mason and Reed, counsel. That's where I met Claire Reed. Claire was in her 40s, sharp eyes, no-nonsense voice, navy suit, hair pulled back, so tight it looked like she had no time for nonsense. She shook my hand once, looked at Adrian, and said, You look worse than your chart. Sit down. I liked her instantly. We spent 2 hours in her conference room while I laid out everything. I expected her to interrupt a lot, but she mostly listened and took notes. When I was done, she asked for dates, names, and exact wording from key conversations. Because I had my notebook, I could answer. At one point, she tapped the sticky note and said, This may be your hinge. Hinge? I asked. The thing that turns suspicion into pattern, she said. Old tests. Delayed external review. Medication changes. Legal routing. Family pressure. If we can tie these together with independent medical testimony and proof of harassment against you, we don't just defend the marriage. We expose coordinated manipulation. Adrian leaned back slowly. Can we do it without triggering a private settlement? Claire gave him a dry look. Do you want quiet or do you want control? He didn't answer.
Claire looked at me. And you?
If this escalates, they will attack your character harder. They'll call you unstable, greedy, disloyal, emotional, opportunistic. You need to decide now whether you can handle being talked about in rooms you're not in. My throat tightened, but I said, They already started. She nodded once. Good. Then you're mentally ahead. Before we left, Claire gave us a list. Copies of all hospital visitor logs for Noah's floor. Statement from Noah. Preserved metadata or screenshots from the gossip post. All versions of the documents Diane asked me to sign. Adrian's old and updated medical summaries. Any witness who can testify to household pressure, especially neutral staff. I looked at the list and felt overwhelmed for a second. Claire noticed and softened just slightly. You don't need to win the whole war this week. You need to secure the evidence before they clean the house. Secure the evidence. That became my job. For the next 2 weeks, my life split in half. On the outside, I played the role they expected. Quiet wife, controlled smile, polite at dinners, careful at events. I let Evelyn think I was learning. I let Vanessa give me fake advice. I let Blake underestimate me. On the inside, I was moving. Rachel helped me buy a cheap prepaid phone and a tiny scanner app subscription under her name. Noah wrote his statement by hand, then again typed, with details about the man who visited his room. Dr. Kaplan and Dr. Morris finalized the second opinion documents. Claire sent formal records requests to the hospital before Sterling Legal could block them. And Maria, sweet, quiet Maria, became the witness I never expected. She didn't want to be publicly involved at first. I understood. She had a job and a son in college. But one evening, after Evelyn snapped at her in front of guests for serving the wrong tea, Maria came to me and said, If needed, I will speak. I put my hand over hers. Only if you're safe. She gave me a sad smile. Safe people don't work in that house. During that same period, Adrian started improving slightly under the corrected medication plan. Not magically, not movie level, but enough that the color in his face came back a little, and he could get through a full conversation without looking like he might collapse. That alone made Evelyn nervous. I saw it at a Sunday brunch when she watched him eat almost half a plate and said, too casually, "You seem energetic this week." Adrian looked up. I changed doctors. The silence at the table was instant. Evelyn set down her fork. Without consulting family counsel? With consulting my pulse, he said. Blake laughed, but it sounded forced. Careful with independent doctors. They tell rich patients what they want to hear. I looked at him and smiled for the first time in front of everyone. Interesting. I thought you preferred independent people when they're questioning hospital patients. Vanessa nearly choked on her drink. Blake's eyes flashed. Excuse me? I kept my smile small. Nothing. Just conversation. Evelyn looked between us, suspicious now. Good. Let her feel it. That night, Adrian came to my room for the first time. Not for anything romantic, just to talk without cameras in the main hallway. He knocked softly and stepped in wearing a sweater. No jacket, no armor. I heard what you did at brunch, he said. I shrugged. I'm learning manners. He laughed quietly, then looked around my room and noticed the stack of labeled envelopes inside my closet. You really built a system, Claire said to secure evidence. He leaned against the dresser, more serious now. Claire also called me today. There's going to be a hospital board meeting next Thursday. My chest tightened. Why? Sterling Holdings oversees one of the networks tied to my care and Noah's treatment. Blake pushed for an emergency governance review, probably to contain the records issue before it spreads. He held my gaze. Claire thinks that's our moment. I stared at him. Public. Boardroom public. Lawyers, executives, hospital compliance, and family members. My heart started pounding. That's too soon. He nodded. I know. I looked toward the closet where the folders were hidden, then back at him. What exactly are we doing there? His voice went very calm. We're stopping them from controlling the story. The week before the meeting felt like standing on train tracks. Everything became sharper. Every comment from Evelyn sounded like a test. Every smile from Vanessa looked fake. Blake started acting extra relaxed, which told me he knew something was coming, but not what. Diane visited me twice with revised documents and softer language. Fake apologies. Fake reset. Emma, she said during the second visit, seated in my room like she belonged there, I think we got off on the wrong foot. This family is under stress. Adrian's condition is emotional for everyone. Let's start fresh. I almost laughed because it was textbook. Claire had literally warned me. Diane slid a thinner folder across my desk. This version is simpler. Just media boundaries and household communication channels. No internal dispute clause. I flipped through it without touching the last page. Why now? She folded her hands. Because misunderstandings grow when people feel isolated. I looked up at her. And who isolated me? For the first time, her smile slipped. She recovered quickly. No one wants conflict. I closed the folder. Then stopped trying to sign in my name. Her eyes hardened. Be careful, Emma. You are in a position many people would envy. I held her gaze. And you're in a position many people would fear. We can both describe reality. She stood up smoothly, but I could see the tension in her jaw. I hope for your sake you know what you're doing. After she left, I immediately wrote down the exact time and wording. That same night, Claire came to the mansion through a service entrance to avoid attention. Rachel met her outside in case anyone asked questions, which is how weird my life had become. My best friend helping a private attorney sneak into a billionaire estate like we were in a crime show. In my room, with Adrian present, Claire laid everything out. This is the order, she said, tapping the folders. First, independent medical update from Kaplan and Morris. Second, evidence of delayed external review and outdated test reliance. Third, harassment pattern against Emma and Noah. Fourth, Attempted document overreach through spouse authorization language. Fifth, governance conflict tied to Blake's office. Adrian nodded. And if they deny everything? Claire looked at him. They will. That's why we have witnesses and timestamps.
She turned to me.
Tomorrow, do not argue with anyone in the meeting unless I signal you. Let them talk. Let them get comfortable. Then we place the evidence. I swallowed hard. What if I panic? Rachel, standing near the door like a bodyguard, said, then squeeze my hand under the table and let Claire eat them alive. It made me laugh, and I needed that. Before they left, Claire gave me one final instruction. Bring the original sticky note, not just copies. I touched the inside pocket of my bag, where I had started keeping it. I will. When the day came, I woke up before sunrise. The mansion was quiet. I got dressed in a simple charcoal suit Claire picked for me. Nothing flashy, nothing soft. I tied my hair back, put on light makeup, and looked at myself in the mirror. I still looked like Emma. Tired, yes.
Changed, yes.
But still me. I whispered to my reflection. You are not crazy. You are not the problem. Speak clearly. Then I went downstairs. Evelyn was already in the breakfast room, perfectly dressed, reading on her tablet like this was any other day. She looked up at me once and smiled.
Big day, she said.
I poured coffee. For some people. She set the tablet down. You're making a mistake if you think embarrassing this family will protect you. I turned to face her.
No.
The mistake was thinking silence would. Her expression went flat. You've become very bold for someone who entered this house with nothing. I looked at her for a long second. I entered this house with a brother to save. That's not nothing. She didn't answer. At 9:30, we arrived at Sterling Medical Network's downtown headquarters. The board meeting wasn't in a flashy room like I expected. It was modern, cold, and very corporate. Glass walls, long dark table, screens at both ends, bottled water lined up perfectly. Exactly the kind of room where people ruin lives while staying polite. Present were hospital executives, compliance officers, outside counsel, Graham, Evelyn, Blake, Vanessa, Diane, Adrian, me, Claire, and, because Claire insisted, Dr. Kaplan on video and Dr. Morris in person. Rachel waited outside in the lobby with Noah, who had just been discharged and looked healthier than he had in months. Claire wanted him nearby in case his statement needed direct confirmation. Seeing him standing there in a jacket instead of a hospital gown almost made me cry right before battle. Inside the boardroom, Blake opened with confidence like this was a show. He stood, clicked a slide on, and started talking about risk containment, public optics, and recent irregularities connected to private family matters affecting hospital reputation. He never said my name at first. He didn't have to. He kept glancing at me. Then he did. Unfortunately, he said, fake regret in his voice, certain personal arrangements involving Mr. Sterling's recent marriage have created exposure. We need temporary oversight adjustments while questions are resolved. Adrian leaned back, pale but steady. Questions created by whom? Blake ignored him and kept going. He presented printouts of gossip coverage, references to unauthorized information leaks, and concerns about spousal interference in care pathways. It was all polished. If I didn't know the truth, it would have sounded professional. When he finished, there was a brief silence. Then Evelyn spoke, softer, more emotional. This has been painful for our family. We welcomed Emma during a difficult season, and I've tried to support her, but she's under tremendous stress. We all are. I only want what is best for Adrian. I almost laughed out loud because it was such a clean victim performance. Claire touched my wrist lightly under the table.
Wait.
A compliance officer asked, do you have evidence of spousal interference? Diane slid a folder forward. We have concerns, not accusations. Claire finally moved. Wonderful, she said, standing up. Then let's discuss evidence instead of concerns. Every head turned. She didn't raise her voice once. That was the scary part. She just started placing documents in front of each person like she was serving dinner. Independent second opinion summary by Dr. Kaplan and Dr. Morris, confirming prior prognosis management relied on outdated test sets and incomplete response data. She set down the copies. Medication discrepancy notes. Timeline of delayed external review requests. Original note recovered from Mr. Sterling's file packet. Confirm old test set only. Delay external review. Blake sat up straighter. Diane's face went still. Claire continued. Now, regarding harassment and improper leverage efforts against my client, Emma Sterling, and her brother Noah Carter, currently a patient within this network, please review the attached witness statement, visitor log request acknowledgement, preserved gossip post screenshots with metadata timestamps, and this partial but traceable email from Mr. Blake Sterling's private office. She placed the email scrap in a clear evidence sleeve in the middle of the table. The room changed instantly. You could feel it. The little shift. The moment the script stopped being theirs. Blake gave a sharp laugh. That's absurd. A torn scrap from a trash bin. Claire looked at him calmly. Would you like me to request your assistant's server records in front of compliance? Or would you prefer to do that after this meeting?
He stopped laughing.
Diane jumped in smoothly. This is a mischaracterization. Administrative coordination around a high-profile patient is common. The note could refer to document version control, not medical manipulation. That was when Dr. Morris spoke, and I will never forget her tone. No, she said flatly. In cardiology, old test set means old imaging or old data. If someone instructed delay of external review while medication plans remained unchanged, that is not version control. That is dangerous. Silence. A hospital compliance director, a woman named Janet Cole, adjusted her glasses and looked at Diane. Did family counsel route any record or care communication requests outside standard clinical channels? Diane opened her mouth, closed it. Legal support may have facilitated. Janet cut her off. That's not the question. Evelyn looked genuinely alarmed now. This is becoming theatrical. I spoke before I could stop myself.
No.
What was theatrical was telling me I was emotional while your people tried to use my name on medical documents. Claire gave me a quick glance, but she didn't stop me. My hands were shaking, but I kept going because if I stayed quiet now, I'd regret it forever. I came into your house to save my brother. I never asked for your money beyond his care. I never leaked anything. I never touched Adrian's medical decisions. But your family humiliated me, questioned my brother in recovery, and tried to make me sign papers that let legal counsel speak on behalf of the spouse. Then when I refused, you called me unstable. I looked at Blake. You called me a predator online before you even knew me. Blake's face had gone pale under his tan. You can't prove I wrote. I can prove your office sent someone to my brother's room, I said. And I can prove you were trying to build a challenge against my marriage while Adrian was still being managed on outdated records. Adrian stood up slowly then, one hand on the table, and every eye went to him. He looked at the board, not his family. I requested independent review weeks ago, he said. It was delayed. My medication was changed without clear consent. My wife was pressured to sign broad legal acknowledgments. My cousin's office monitored her brother. If this board still thinks the risk here is public optics, then we are all in the wrong room. No one moved. Then Janet Cole looked at the CEO and said, I recommend immediate compliance hold on all family counsel-mediated patient communications related to Mr. Sterling and any associated cases, plus an external audit. The CEO nodded immediately. Agreed. A second board member added, and temporary suspension of Mr. Blake Sterling from all health network oversight pending review. Blake shot to his feet. You can't do that office smear campaign. Janet didn't even look at him. Sit down, Mr. Sterling. He didn't. Security came in 2 minutes later. I didn't even know corporate buildings had security that moved that fast, but apparently they do when the board is watching. Vanessa started crying quietly, not because she felt bad for me, but because her husband was being embarrassed in public. Evelyn looked like she couldn't breathe. Graham sat completely still, face gray, staring at the evidence sleeve with the email scrap like he was replaying every choice that led there. Diane tried one last time. This can be resolved privately. Claire smiled without warmth. That option was available before you tried to route authority through my client's signature. Then Noah was brought in for 5 minutes. Just 5. Claire had him confirm, in front of compliance and the board recorder, that an unfamiliar man came to his hospital room asking about Emma's emotional state and Adrian's condition. Noah was nervous, but he was clear. He even remembered the man's tie color and the phrase financial assistance review. When he finished, he looked at me once, and I could see he was trying so hard to be brave. I wanted to hug him right there, but I stayed still. By the end of the meeting, the consequences were moving faster than I expected.
Blake's
access badge was deactivated pending investigation. Diane was ordered to produce all communications related to Adrian's care routing requests. The board initiated an external compliance audit. Adrian's independent care directive was recognized and locked through a neutral clinical channel. And Claire formally placed notice that any retaliation against me or Noah would trigger separate legal action. For the first time, the truth stood right in the middle of all of us, and they couldn't run from it anymore. When we walked out of the boardroom, my legs almost gave out from adrenaline. Rachel caught my arm in the hallway and whispered, "You did it." I laughed and cried at the same time. I thought I was going to throw up. "No, you looked amazing," she said. Terrified, but amazing. Noah hugged me so hard I squeaked. "I'm sorry I cried in there." I pulled back and held his face. "You were perfect." A few steps away, Adrian was speaking quietly with Claire and Dr. Morris. He looked exhausted, but he also looked lighter somehow, like a locked window had finally opened. Then I felt eyes on me. Evelyn stood at the far end of the hallway near the elevators, alone now. Vanessa had gone after Blake. Graham was still inside. Diane was nowhere to be seen. Evelyn looked smaller than she ever had in the mansion. She walked toward me slowly and stopped at arm's length. For a second, I thought she was going to insult me again. Instead, she said, very quietly, "You humiliated this family." I looked at her. "Your family did that to itself." Her mouth trembled just once. I was trying to protect my son. I believed she believed that. That was the tragedy of it. "You were trying to control everyone," I said. "That's not the same thing." She looked at Adrian then, and when he met her eyes, he didn't look away. He didn't raise his voice. He just said, "You don't get to manage me through fear anymore." Evelyn's face crumpled for half a second before she fixed it again. Then she turned and walked into the elevator, without another word. I watched the doors close and felt something inside me unclench. The months after that were not magically peaceful, but they were real. Blake was formally removed from his health network oversight roles and later lost his proxy influence in 2 other Sterling divisions while the audit expanded. I heard through Claire that his private office settled quietly with a hospital over improper third-party contact. He didn't go to prison or anything dramatic, but the important part was this. He lost access, lost credibility, and lost the room he used to dominate. Diane resigned before the internal review finished. Claire said people like her always know when the file is getting too heavy. Vanessa disappeared from social events for a while, then reappeared with a new charity initiative, which honestly felt exactly like her. Graham surprised me the most. He came to the mansion library one evening, stood awkwardly by the door, and said, "I should have stopped this earlier." It wasn't a perfect apology. It was late, but it was the first honest sentence I'd ever heard from him. I said, "Yes, you should have." He nodded, accepted it, and left. As for Evelyn, she changed the least and the most at the same time. She was still proud, still sharp, still controlling by habit. But after the board meeting, she stopped speaking to me like I was disposable. We were never warm. I don't want to lie and make it sound like we became mother and daughter. We didn't. But one morning, weeks later, she passed me in the garden while I was on the phone with Noah and paused. "How is your brother?" she asked. I almost dropped my phone. "He's good," I said carefully. "He starts outpatient rehab Monday." She nodded once.
Good.
Then she kept walking. That was it. 2 syllables. But from her, it felt like a whole speech. Noah kept getting stronger. He moved out of the hospital, then into a small apartment near mine with Rachel's help, because I was not letting him live alone too far away after all this. He started physical therapy, made friends with one of the nurses, and slowly became himself again. The dumb jokes, the bad singing, the constant hunger. One night he looked around his tiny kitchen and said, "You know this is all your fault, right?" I stared at him. "Excuse me?" He grinned. "Now I have to do something huge with my life, because you did all that. The pressure is insane." I threw a dish towel at him, and he laughed so hard he had to sit down. That laugh healed something in me. And Adrian? That part is harder to explain because people always want the clean answer. Did we fall in love? Did we stay a contract? Did it become a fairy tale? Life is messier than that. At first, we were allies. Then friends, kind of by accident. We started having coffee in the mornings before the house woke up. We compared notes after doctor visits and legal updates. He asked about Noah. I asked about his father. He told me he used to sneak out of board dinners as a teenager and hide in the garage just to get 10 minutes of quiet. I told him about splitting ramen with Noah when we were broke and pretending it was minimalist living. Sometimes we laughed. Sometimes we just sat there in silence, and it felt easy. His condition didn't vanish. Dr. Kaplan was honest from day one. Adrian still had a serious heart problem, and his life would be managed, monitored, and uncertain for a long time. But the corrected treatment plan gave him more time and better stability than the 4 months everyone had built a script around. That changed everything. The marriage contract became a legal question again after the dust settled. Claire reviewed it with me line by line and said, "You can leave cleanly now if you want." I thought I would say yes immediately. Instead, I asked for a week. In that week, I went back to my old apartment, sat on the floor where I used to sort bills, and looked at the life I had before all this. I thought about fear,
Debt. Shame.
the way I kept apologizing for existing in rich spaces, the way I had started doubting my own eyes when they called me emotional. Then I thought about the boardroom, the evidence on the table. Noah standing straight while he gave his statement. Adrian looking at me like we were finally on the same side. I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't deciding based on gratitude anymore. I was deciding based on choice. So I went back to the mansion, at least for a while. Not because it was glamorous. Not because I forgot what they did. Because Adrian and I decided to renegotiate everything honestly. No more secret clauses. No legal route through household counsel. No using my name without written consent. Independent medical directives locked. Separate funds for Noah's treatment fully documented. And a public correction issued through proper channels clearing any implication that I interfered with care. Claire drafted it. Adrian signed first. Months later, I moved out of the main mansion and into the carriage house on the estate while Adrian continued treatment. It gave us space and dignity. Rachel called it the world's weirdest not divorce, and honestly, she wasn't wrong. We took it one day at a time. Some days I sat with him at appointments. Some days I didn't. Some days he was strong enough to work for hours. Some days he was flat on the couch cussing at spreadsheets and cardiology. Once, after a long appointment, we were sitting in my car eating fries in silence, and he said, "You know, my mother still thinks you manipulated me." I laughed. "She's not completely wrong. I did force you to eat actual lunch last week." He turned and smiled, the real one this time. That might be the most control anyone's had over me. I looked at him and felt something warm and steady. Not dramatic, not rushed. Just real. "Good," I said. "Get used to it." A year after the board meeting, Noah finished his rehab program and got a job doing scheduling for a logistics company. Rachel got promoted and celebrated by making us all go bowling, even though Adrian is terrible at bowling and gets competitive in a deeply embarrassing way. Claire still sends me one-line texts like "save your receipts" and "never sign in hallways," which honestly should be on a t-shirt. And me? I'm not the woman who walked into that hospital billing office shaking and desperate.
I still get scared sometimes.
I still hate legal language. I still cry when I'm too tired. But I don't fold as fast anymore. I keep copies. I ask questions. I read every line. I trust my instincts sooner. Most importantly, I stopped letting people with polished voices tell me what my reality is. Now, when I think back to that night in the Sterling mansion, to Evelyn calling me a nurse with a wedding ring, I don't feel the same shame anymore. I feel clarity. I did what I had to do to save my brother. Then I learned I also had to save myself. And once I did, the same house that tried to erase me had to sit there and watch me be heard. From everything I went through, I learned that desperation can put you in dangerous rooms, but it does not make you weak. If people keep calling you emotional while they hide papers, move records, and twist your words, trust your instincts and start keeping proof. And if you ever have to fight for your name, fight clearly, because the truth gets stronger when it's documented. If you've ever gone through something similar or you want to share your own story, write it in the comments below. Don't forget to share this story with your friends, like the video, and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories.